I think life is really tough for working parents, but especially working mums who are bearing the brunt of it, and especially people with kids under 10. What we're hearing is that even with kids going back to school, nurseries are still struggling. Some are putting caps on numbers. Breakfast clubs for older children, after school clubs aren't necessarily up and running. And of course, that whole network that working parents rely on of mates and grandparents and childminders is under real pressure. So I think there are an awful lot of working mums out there who are feeling really stressed right now.
It's interesting, isn't it? Because I guess lots of people would think, well, nurseries are reopened, schools are reopened, what's the problem? But it's almost a real kind of patchwork of support that so many working parents rely on, whether it's grandparents or after school clubs, that simply isn't there at the minute.
Well, you pull one thread, and the worry is that everything unravels. And what we're seeing is, even where people can work at home, it's very often the case that it's the working mother who's taking on the big responsibility for children, and having kids around your feet and trying to do a job isn't easy. And some of the choices that women are being forced to make include cutting their hours of work, or going in really early, or ending up doing effectively an evening shift to try and keep on top of their job. So I think a lot of working women in particular are desperate for some more flexibility, but also desperate to see the government take childcare seriously and provide some support, especially for the nursery sector.
It's interesting to hear you talk there about how working mothers in particular are bearing the brunt. Of course, lots of dads are spending lots of time with childcare responsibilities too, but studies by the Institute for Thistle Studies and others have seemed to suggest it's mainly women picking up quite a lot of the burden. What does this mean for women's job prospects?
Well, I think the risk here is that we see attitudes and behaviours setting women back decades. We've made a lot of progress in terms of equal pay, respect for women, a recognition that, women want to get on at work as much as men. But when women are picking up the lion's share of the burden, not just of childcare, but it looks like housework too, that makes life difficult. And it's exposed just how fragile and underfunded our childcare system is. And, I think the government needs to understand that we need working patterns that work for parents, and especially working mums, as much as anybody else. There's got to be two-way flexibility. We'd like to see a right to flexible working from day one.
You talked there a little bit about this, but what do you think the government needs to do right now to try and help working parents get back to the office as it says it wants to?
Well, all our work has shown that we've still got lots of nurseries that are on the brink of collapse. Many have had no choice but to cap numbers, and that questions whether they're financially viable over this coronavirus period. And as I said before, a lot of the informal care that working parents rely on has unravelled. Childminders, families, it's much more difficult. So I think we need, if anybody's going to get a bailout, the childcare sector deserves a bailout, because that's crucial for the economy. That allows working parents to do their job. So it would be a false economy not to give proper support to childcare. But I think we also need to see progress on two other fronts. There needs to be that right to flexible working. Where we can make it work with the business, let's have two-way flexibility, because I can tell you, as you probably know all too well, that when you're doing long hours and a pressured job, having that bit more flexibility can make all the difference. So let's have that right to flexible working and a bit more compassion on that front. But I also think we've got to make progress on equal pay. We're not there yet. We've still got a way to go before women get equal pay for work of equal value. And as long as there's unequal pay, then it feels like women are always going to end up picking up the pieces when there's a childcare problem, because in the end, they're not often, on average, earning as much as their partner. So we've got to see action on that front too.